Welcome back, welcome back. It's been almost 2 months since Juan Manuel Santos, a former defense minister, took office as Colombia's new president with a big majority. Since then, he's met with Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez and announced that ties between the two countries are being restored. Quite a surprise to a lot of people in South America. Meanwhile, government forces have dealt a stunning blow to the Farc rebels, with 27 rebels killed, including one of the most feared guerrilla leaders. But how will his presidency be different from that of his very successful predecessor, Alvaro Uribe? Well, how far is, for instance, Colombia on the fight against the Farc? Earlier this week, I spoke to Colombia's President Santos in Bogota and began by asking him about this week's operation. Mr. President, I said, does this feel like a triumph possibly for you?
Well, this strike that we had last week is probably a tipping point for this organization, because we went after the most important person that they had in their military organization. He was almost a myth, and he was the one who maintained discipline, and he also maintained the organization as a terrorist group. And striking him is a strike to the heart of the organization. But not only that, we found a lot of information. We found 14 computers full of information and more than 60 USBs, memories, that will give us very, very helpful information to go after the rest of the organization in the rest of the country. So we hopefully are seeing a peace in Colombia after, you rightly mentioned, 50 years of this war. I think we're seeing peace sooner than later, and we said we were willing to sit and negotiate with them and to dialogue with them if they stop doing terrorist acts. As long as they continue to recruit children, to kidnap people, to extort people, and to do the terrorist acts that they do, we will not sit down. We don't negotiate with terrorists.
Quite understood. And in fact, I think that also you're going to demand, aren't you, that any hostages they have are released first, yes?
That's a precondition, yes. They must release the hostages before any possibility of sitting down to negotiate.
And so a few years ago, 8 years ago or so, they said there were 15,000 Farc terrorists in being in the country. A couple of years ago, maybe 6,000 or 8,000 Farc terrorists. How many are there out there now at the moment? 6,000 to 8,000 or less?
I would say less than 5,000. They have been losing a lot of people very fast. We have a very effective program of demobilization. We have told them, demobilized, we will receive you. You will probably not go to jail. You can go back into society, and this has had tremendous success. Only this year, almost 1,700 members of the organization this year have demobilized. And so they're having difficulties recruiting new members. That's why they've been recruiting children, which is a crime against humanity. And we've told them, stop that, because there will be no possibility of any kind of dialogue if you continue to recruit children, among other terrorist acts. And therefore, they're having tremendous difficulties in maintaining their numbers, and so they're decreasing in numbers, which means that they are more and more forced to go into the very, very remote areas of our jungles, where, as a matter of fact, we struck them last week.
Tell me, how did your meeting go with President of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez? There had been pretty poor relations, obviously, previously between Venezuela and Colombia. Do you think you did make a new start? Did you make a new friend? I mean, how did it go?
It went very well. As a matter of fact, personally, he and I did not like each other at all. But when I was campaigning, I reached out and said to him, listen, I'm going to win, and I want to have good relations with Venezuela, because if you and I fight, it will be the Venezuelans and the Colombians who would suffer. And fortunately, he responded positively. And we had a meeting, a very frank meeting, where we said, and I said to him, let's respect our differences. You're never going to convince me to think like you do, and I'm probably never going to convince you to think like I do. But let's respect our differences and have a good relation. And so we started this relation, and it's been going very well, very well. There's 5 different committees that have been advancing to normalize our relations with Venezuela. And this for us is only good news, because what we had before was the worst of all possible situations. No dialogue, no diplomatic relations, no trade. They were accused, and there were indications that they were harboring the terrorist groups, Colombian terrorist groups. The only worst thing was war, which for me was inconceivable. So fortunately, now we can say we are normalizing the relationship. We are exchanging ambassadors. Trade is starting to flow. He's starting to pay our exporters. And as a matter of fact, I talked to him today. I told him that I was very happy that the elections in Venezuela went well, and that people were able to vote normally with no restrictions, and that was a very good step forward.
Well, that's very interesting. New news on a new relationship. But now tell me, Mr. President, people sometimes say that if you succeed in reducing the amount of drug cultivation in Colombia, that all that will happen is that the drug trade will go to your near neighbors. The drug trade will move next door, as it were. Is that true? Or can you beat the drug trade and not export it to the countries next door?
Well, as a matter of fact, this is already happening. We have succeeded in reducing the cultivation of the coca leaves to the extent that we are now number 2, not number 1. Peru is number 1 producer of coca leaf. But not only that, we have hit the cartels so hard that they've gone to Central America, to Mexico, to the Caribbean islands, and they're having a big problem with these drug cartels. We are helping them to fight them, because we need everybody to be successful in this war on drugs, which cannot be won by one single country or one single group of countries. This has to be a world effort. Otherwise, it's like going in a static bicycle. You can go very fast, but you will not advance.
That's very clear. Now, in terms of the future and in terms of dealing with your position at the moment, there's one other thing that's really very fascinating and admirable, which is what's happened vis-a-vis President Uribe. He was very popular. He was a tough act for you to follow, but you seem to have done it. You seem to have succeeded in terms of following President Uribe. How did you do that?
Well, thank you very much, but I've only been almost 2 months in power. It's true that the polls say I'm more popular than any other president in our history, but I'm only starting. I hope to be able to continue, or I would be willing to invest this political capital for the good of my country. I think that if you do things correctly and you think long term and you're willing to risk, part of your capital, many times this becomes an investment, not a cost. And so far, what we have done has been very well received. We are doing a tremendous effort to reconciliate the country, to unite the country, and there's been a very, very good response, not only internally, also externally. And we hope to continue this momentum. Colombia is going through, as I told you, a very interesting moment, and I hope to increase the momentum so we can really take off.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. President, for being with us and for giving us that fascinating reading, or photograph perhaps, of where things are at the moment in Colombia. We look forward very much to talking again as well.
Thank you. Thank you for interviewing me. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
And from Bogota, back now in the studio, that's all for this week. My thanks to all of my guests, of course the President, but all of our guests today. Do join us again 7 days' time for another edition of Cross Over the World.